Hi there, I'm Mary Curran, and I'm thrilled to be a guest host on Authors on the Air Global Radio Network today. Normally, I do a show called Redirect Destiny on YouTube, and what we do is we talk to people that make amazing achievements at midlife. And I like to focus not just on what they accomplish, but how they did it to help all of us achieve our goals. Well, my goal is to be a writer, and that's why I listen to Authors on the Air. I absolutely love hearing interviews with authors and why they write and what they write. Everything about it is fascinating to me. So much so that I actually contacted Pam Stack, and we have become great friends. When she heard that I was writing a humorous mystery, she said, "You have to meet Deborah Coonts." She was right. I absolutely love the Lucky series. It's wonderful. And now I've been lucky enough to meet Deborah Coonts and do an interview with her. And let me tell you something, she is a fascinating person. She was a pilot, she was an attorney, and now the things she's doing with her writing are really remarkable. She's gone from humorous mysteries to thrillers, and she has some new projects on the horizon as well. But rather than hear about it from me, let's hear about it from her. Here's the interview. Enjoy. All right, here she is, Deborah Coonts. I have been so excited that Pam introduced me to your books, and now I get to meet you as an author and a person as well. What a joy to meet you. Thank you for being here today.
Well, it's a real privilege for sure. And I love meeting you. And we had email conversation before this even came up.
Yeah.
It's so fun. I feel like I got to know you a little bit in a different way as a writer yourself, which is amazing.
Right.
And
We'll do all the advice on writing off camera because right now I just want to tell you that I really love that Lucky series. I was trying to remember the last time that I have been this engaged in a series, and it's been a while. So I was kind of heartbroken when I saw on your website that this is the last Lucky book.
I
10, right? You did 10.
no, I did 11 and actually 12 total because I did a co-authored book about 3 books ago with my friend Josie Brown.
Okay.
And
And a
so
couple novellas.
couple of novellas that let me take some of the ancillary characters and sort of flesh them, give them voice, because Lucky tells the stories all the time and nobody else really gets to tell their own story. So I got to take Lucky's mom, Mona, and Miss P, her assistant, and play with them a little bit more to let people see, and her dad, to show where her dad and her mother, how they met, and what the whole situation with that was. I did a dual timeline novella. I do not recommend it. It was the hardest plotted thing I've ever done, but it was super fun when it came out.
Most of the people watching this today probably have been fans of the Lucky series like I have. What's it like to come to conclusion after spending that much time with the character? How did you make the decision and how are you feeling about it?
Well, it was bittersweet, and there's good points and bad points. After you live with a character that long, they're so easy to write, and that's both a good thing and a bad thing. You feel like it's getting a little stale, and if it's stale for me, it's going to be stale for my readers. And I felt like I just didn't have any more Vegas shtick, to do. And Lucky had sort of grown into the woman I wanted her to be. And I didn't want to do one of these series that just goes on and on and on and on until nobody's reading it anymore.
It's a hard thing to do, especially because that's where you have your connection with your readers, but it's kind of like overstaying a welcome at a party.
Yeah. And I had some readers that, weren't happy about it, but they were very nice about, me finishing the series. And then I gave them 90 days to score, and Lucky actually phones in from time to time. And then there's a character that I did not bring back after the 4th or 5th book in Lucky that a lot of people liked. And so I think it was 3 Lucky books ago, I introduced the protagonist from 90 Days to Score. She came and was part of the murder investigation in Las Vegas. And I think she was introduced in the book Lucky Score. And so I had set it up to be in Lucky's universe, but not in her world. And so I wanted the interaction between the 2 series and the ability for characters to sort of travel back and forth if needed. And I think that's gone over really well, and people were happy to see the character that I brought back.
Oh, and that's become such a popular thing. Michael Conley's coming out with a new Lincoln Lawyer one now that incorporates all of his characters.
Yeah, and it's but I did it by design. I did it 3 lucky books ago, and I thought I would have one more lucky book in me than I did at the end, and I realized no, I'm at the end now, and so I did lucky enough, and it was enough, and I miss lucky. But to get back to your question that you asked, I really feel freer. I can do other things that I want to write and do. I have series I've started in different genres that I haven't written another book in or anything like that, and I would like to do that.
And at the end of the day, you're an artist.
Well,
I mean,
and
you have to feel creative, right?
you do, and you can't. I don't know how these people just churn out the same stuff year after year after year. I mean, I have nothing but admiration for them, but I can't do it. I need to stretch myself, to learn something new. Lucky was all in the first person, so I write, my thriller, my, romantic suspense, and sort of a women's fiction kind of mainstream fiction book. I wrote them all in third person.
I want to get to those in a minute. Let me jump back to the Lucky series for a minute, and we'll also talk a little bit more about the serial you did too, because that's such a cool way to use the internet. But writing is a craft, and a lot of people don't know that. And it's like, I tell people it's like sewing. Can you imagine the first pair of shoes or the first pair of pants and what they'd look like? You kind of learn as you go, right? So you felt that Lucky really achieved her arc and had this tremendous growth. How about you as a writer? What did you learn from doing that? And is that a jumping point to try to take on maybe some more difficult projects?
I try to learn with every book. I try to become a better writer. And it's funny, I go back and read one to Get Lucky, which was the first one in the Lucky series, and it's fine. But now knowing what I know now, I would go back and say, oh, that phrase goes, that sentence needs to be out of here. What was I thinking? And so I hope I've learned better craft through each book. And
tried. I'm going to be honest, because I am a writer and I'm trying to get published right now. I haven't been published yet, but I tried as I'm going through the series to see the difference. You were pretty darn talented right from the beginning.
Oh, thank you. Well, I wish I could tell you that was the first book I wrote, but it wasn't.
Takes a while, right?
That was the third manuscript, and I probably had written 1,000,000 words by then, just in revisions and trying to figure out even just how to get that cadence, that commercial fiction cadence that you have in your head from being a reader. I was trying to get my prose to sound like that. I've always been a commercial fiction person. I don't really wallow too much in literary fiction. And so I had that sort of commercial fiction pacing and dialogue and all of that. And dear God, it took forever to get mine. I remember the first day I wrote a paragraph that I thought sounded like something I'd read, and I was like, whoa, this
Finally.
is awesome. Okay. How did I do that? And so,
I get it. Trust me, I totally get it. And then just from page 1 to all the way to the end and making sure all the plot makes sense and all that, right?
Oh, I know. I mean,
it's a lot more effort than most.
It's like eating a cow, one bite at a time.
You readers that are watching this, it takes a lot of effort even for a simple book. So you know what? Instead of talking about the serial, make sure we get to that by the end of this, because I don't want to jump all over. But let's talk about what you're working on now, because the newer books, they're, in my opinion, as a writer, a slightly more difficult level. But you've also chosen such different concepts and really different venues. They're all over the place, from going from just Vegas.
I know.
So what struck you, and do you like visiting these different settings and venues?
It's a totally terrible thing to do for your career, okay? Because I have readers that read light romantic mystery, and now I'm writing the sequel to a dark / medical psychological thriller.
So I guess we should back up for those of you that are just strictly Lucky fans. Let's name the books. We have After Me.
Yeah, and that's the one I'm writing the sequel to.
The sequel to, right?
And we have Deep Water, which was a romantic suspense, takes place out of Houston in the Gulf of Mexico in the oil business with a female helicopter pilot. And Crushed, which is the first in a series that I envision set in Napa. And there are 5 women, I think, in the stories, and each woman was going to be the main character of.
Oh, for one of them?
Novel. Yeah.
Well, I think that we should do research.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I rented a house
Go
in
to
St.
Napa.
Helena for 2 months.
Yeah, we'll go to Napa. Be glad to help you with research for that one.
Okay, good,
All right,
good.
so
I think that'll work out just fine.
let's talk a
So
little bit about After Me. So did you set it up to have a sequel and a series? And do you want to tell us just a little bit about it to maybe engage people to want to read that one?
sure, it's actually my favorite book that I've
Oh,
written, to be
cool.
honest. It was the hardest book that I wrote. And I got really interested in um, how we remember things. And I sort of got interested in stem cell therapy for Alzheimer's and some things, some things like that. So I started researching all of the latest science on that. And then a friend of mine who is very woo-woo and metaphysical started talking about how the body remembers things. And I was like, seriously, the body remembers everything? But I just sort of let it all percolate. And sure enough, about 4 years after that conversation, Stanford University came out and proved that we have memories that actually change our DNA. So the body does remember. And I was thinking about all of the transplants that have been done with higher level organs and how the transplantees will manifest traits from the donor. And I thought, okay, that is really
Wow.
weird.
Yeah,
And
that's
there's a lot of anecdotal evidence about that. And so I just sort of let it all. I really love the medical field and cutting edge science and that kind of stuff. It's always just been sort of a passion read for me. I'm a total nerd. And so I came up with this story about a woman who has the genetic form of early onset Alzheimer's, and it's a familial thing. And she used to be an undercover cop in New York, participated in a bust that went bad that involved about $20 million worth of diamonds. And when the story opens, she's in the witness protection program in Portland, Oregon, and she comes home to her condo one day and finds a dead guy in her bathtub. And she can't remember why. She has no idea why. She can remember the bust and all of that, and people remind her of it, but and so she has to figure out why people are after her and what they want from her.
wow. And so she has to go back and try to find out what some of these suppressed memories are.
Yeah, and the problem with that was, number one, I told it in the first person. How do you tell a story from the first person point of view of somebody who's struggling with early onset Alzheimer's? And then I couldn't use the Alzheimer's as a story crutch. I couldn't get to the climax and just say, oh, well, she forgot.
Right, because that would be a cheat.
It's like, that's like cheating.
Yeah.
And so I had to figure out something else, and which I did, but the book was so hard to write that I put it aside for about 6 months because I just didn't know how to tell her story. And I started researching how people who are memory impaired handle life. How do they make notes? They put things in their phone. They have color coding systems. They move a plant in front of the door,
Every time I went to visit my parents, there'd be a note by the thing, Mary's arriving.
Right. Yeah.
Whatever time. She would put, my mom had Alzheimer's, obviously. And she would put a note by the oven, put chicken in at 4 p.m.
Right.
Just, it was sad, but at least she was smart enough to try to help herself out.
Yeah, and so then I came up with some quirky things that she does too. Like she has a Sharpie that she carries and she writes important things on herself.
Yeah.
And so she's really this sort of edgy, character. And it was so much fun to write. And I'm writing the sequel right now. It'll be out November 1st. It's called Deadfall. But it's just so much fun to be in that world. And this is actually about synthetic biology, this one. And I'm doing something different.
You're going to be our new Michael Crichton.
Well, this is what happens. This is what happens to me. Okay. So I couldn't go back and do another book about Alzheimer's. Who wants to read about that? And so now this book is alternating first person and third person by scene. And so I have the character from After Me. Her name is Kate Sawyer. She's doing one part of the investigation, and then I introduced 2 new characters, a couple that are sort of like, there's a lot of sexual tension, but they have a lot of trouble dealing with each other. And they're chasing all over the world trying to figure out how this certain thing was made and who made it in order to hurt somebody. And so
So I think, can I say that we've clearly crossed the line from rom-com into thriller?
oh, totally. I think thriller is where my heart is
Yeah.
more than, I mean,
But I'll
I love
tell you
money.
something. I'll tell you something. It really is like you almost need a business plan because it is so tough to pull all those pieces together. You really do need to start with something that's, for lack of a better way to say it, a little more simple before you start plotting at that level. What do you think?
Oh, I agree. I
Yeah.
agree. I couldn't have written these books when I started out,
Yeah.
not even 3 or 4 years in. You know, I just didn't know enough. And one of the interesting things is that in writing the serial, that's a whole different kind of plotting. But going through that exercise, I found that in finishing the sequel to the thriller, that I used some of the skill set that I developed there because I'm cutting back and forth, cutting back and forth. And in the serial, it was in 1,000-word installments, and each installment had to have a beginning, a middle, and an end. And the end had to be sort of a cliffhanger or a lead to keep people reading
Right.
the next days.
I'll see it all. That all comes together. Let's tell people quickly. We're going to be on. We could be on for 24 hours because this is.
This always happens to me. I
I
don't know
thought I
why.
was never going to let go of Lucky, and I'm already going to dump that series and jump into After Me so I can get the first one read before the next one comes out. But you have been doing, and I always wonder about readers and how much do they want to communicate with authors, and do they want websites to be interactive, or do they just want to know when something new is coming out? You know, in other words, use it as a marketing tool. But this serial idea that you came up with is so cool. So let's take a minute and describe that. And by the way, for all of you watching, when you go to the website, you'll see these other books that we're talking about as well. So if we're jumping around a little too much, don't worry. It's very clear.
It'll make sense. I promise.
It all makes sense.
10 years from now.
But how did you come up with this idea?
Well, I am not going to take credit for it because it was not my idea. I have a friend of mine, a very good friend of mine, a very good writer, Stephanie Bond, who writes similar to Lucky. She writes light romantic mysteries. And this was her idea, and she started it out I think this year, maybe the 5th year that she's done it. And I tried to get my act together to do mine last year, but I didn't. And I got married just in the fall before that, and life was just going in a different direction. And I decided to forget it and enjoy what was happening, and I'd get back to it. So I did this year.
Good
But
job.
it was her idea, and she does it for 6 months. I don't know how she does it. A daily installment starting July 1st, ending December 31st.
So I don't think we've made it clear yet. So when you go to Deborah's website, which is deborahcoonts.com, we'll put it up on the screen. Every day there's an installment of a book, and you can read it for free for how many days?
Well, this whole thing started July 1st. Let's go back to the beginning. It started July 1st. And so for the first 10 days of July, you could read all 10 days. So you could come on the 10th day and start at the beginning and get caught up. And by day 11, the first 10 days went down, day 11 went up. And from that point through the end of the month, the installments are up for 24 hours. I do that exact same thing in August, this month, and September. But, you know, if you didn't start there, you can catch up because all the entire month's installments are published on the first of that month in novella form, digital novella form at, you know, Apple, Nook, Amazon, Kobo.
And for a very reasonable, I think it's like $2.99. You can get.
Yeah, it's $2.99. It's a novella. It's 30-something thousand words.
But I'll tell you something. Since you and I first met, I've been popping in and reading every day. It's kind of like a reader scavenger hunt. I'm like, oh, you know,
what's happening today?
I'm pretty excited. And if you're wondering if you'll like it or not, for those of you watching, the very first page is always there.
Yes.
So you can kind of go, oh, this is something I'll like. And I'll tell you something, the first page I promise you, will draw you in. It's great.
Oh, thank you. I worked so hard on that first installment.
It
was set up for everything, and I had to keep, you know, motivation going. And so anyway, I had a blast with the whole thing. It was super interesting to do because, as I alluded to before, it was a totally different mindset from a plotting point of view and even a writing point of view, and it's great
Yeah,
to sit
you
and
have to
say,
go
gosh,
house
all I
to
have to write today is 1,000 words. This is awesome,
yeah. But did
And
you make sure that it was all done before you posted any of it?
I meant to do that. I had the first two done and part of the third when the first one started posting. So I knew I was going to finish it, but I usually don't like to be driven by that sort of thing because I'm sitting there going, what if I can't tie it all up good? What if I run out of ideas and I can't do it and people are already invested? And
Yeah.
I thought, yeah, just write the friggin' thing, And so it all worked out. I think I'm going to do it every summer starting
Huh.
July 1st, and there'll
It's a
be
perfect
another.
time to do it because when you're on vacation, what a fun thing to tap in and see what's going
Yeah,
on with
and
something.
it'll always be a 90 days to something,
I love it.
you know.
What's the response been from your readers? Has anybody written or?
It's actually been really good. I was really fearful that they were going to trash it because it wasn't lucky,
Yeah.
and nothing is lucky. Lucky was lucky. And I thought, I wonder what they're going to, say. And they've been super kind. People have really liked it. And it's done way more than I expected. I didn't have high expectations for it. I mean, when you launch something new and you're just starting that, it's a build. It takes a while. And even if you have a whole other fully fledged series, yes, you may start with a little bit of momentum, but it's still not that series. So you've got to lure people over and hopefully they like it.
So the two really big things you're working on right now is first this serial, and you go to deborahcoonts.com to take a look at that. And trust me, it's very clever and it's fun. And then you're also working on the sequel for the After Me, but I think we should really plug After Me one more time because you got to read it before the sequel comes out. And the fact that you're tapping into some of this cool medical technology, I love it. We need that, especially in the, I hate to say this, but I think especially in the women writing community. I don't really think of gender a whole lot, but I can't think of that many women that are tapping into the true, like the, what it be called, a bioscience?
Yeah, it's synthetic biology, that kind of stuff. And that sounds really intimidating, but I use my research in order to create a good story. I'm not going to give you a 90-page dissertation on how to modify DNA. It just, you may get a sentence or two of how they do it and off, then you're off and running, in the
No.
story.
The
But
impetus for the idea to me sounds so intriguing. I just think it sounds fabulous. I can't wait to read it.
it's been really fun, and I like the characters, and the two new characters that I came up with, I really like them. And my sort of idea, if the series goes on, past 3 or 4 books, was to sort of do a backstitch kind of method. Like you get a first person novel in Kate Sawyer's point of view, and then you get a novel that is partially in Kate Sawyer's point of view, but in a third person that introduces new characters. So maybe the next novel, you get them as first person characters. And then after that, you introduce somebody else because the science is changing so much. And you can't have, a geneticist and a computer geek do everything,
Yeah.
because the science is much broader than that. And I may get an idea that has nothing to do with genetics. It may have something to do with, I don't know what, but something else. And so I may need a new character, that has that expertise, but I want to keep the continuity. And then I can have Kate come back in if she's needed or, or whatever. And so have people sort of wander in and out because the idea of using synthetic biology or all the other advancements in medicine is so broad that it, who knows, and I've got a good idea for the next book, and then a really good idea for the one after that, and then
Wow.
we'll see where
So
it all goes.
I was going to say, I mean, you're already busy for years to come.
Oh, I've got more books than I have years left for sure.
Yeah.
And
And
because
then,
I've got the 5 in the Crush series I have to write. I've got the female helicopter pilot that's, stranded out there somewhere that's got to go do something. Then I've got the After Me series, and then I've got the 90 Days to Score that I'm going to do once a year. So, and then I've got this other book that's sort of a work of the heart that has nothing to do with any of these things. And we'll see. We'll see. This would be a really good time to write it.
How do you keep all your ideas organized? Do you do notebooks? Is it on a computer? Where do you keep all of the thoughts?
I handwrite it in notebooks, and what's really awful is I wasn't organized about the notebooks, and so I didn't say, well, this is the After Me series, this is Crush, this is, and so I'm
I've done
going
the
back
exact
to
same thing.
notebooks.
I had to go back in and put sticky notes just to find a couple things that I really needed while I was working on my current project.
Well, the first line in Want to Get Lucky, I had written it 5 years before I wrote the novel. And it was
Wow.
on an old computer in the garage. And I couldn't remember what the line was. I just remembered that it had something to do with a girl falling out of a helicopter. And I thought that was a really great way to start. And for some reason, it was like, could I not have written another line? But no, I had to go get the computer out of the garage.
I know that feeling. You wrote it and it was perfect, and you have to.
Yeah, it's not going to be better if I try to write it again. It's going to be worse.
I know. I love that. I have done the exact same thing. I can relate to that.
It's crazy.
I'm glad to know I'm in good company.
Absolutely. I mean, writers, we have borderline personality disorders,
I love that Pam has been introducing me to writers, because as I meet them, I'm like, oh, I do that. Oh, I do that. And I'm like, oh,
this is my tribe. Oh. These are my people.
Yeah. All right. And then before we sign off, I know we're at our time limit. We'll definitely, Deborah, have another chat soon on Authors on the Air.
I hope so.
I'm positive Pam's going to want us back for an encore performance.
Absolutely.
In addition,
if not, I'll tell her she does.
Yeah, exactly. In addition to all of those projects, I told everybody I'm visiting from a show that we call Redirect Destiny on YouTube. And Deborah also is working on a project to help people achieve goals. So over on Redirect Destiny, we're going to talk a little bit more about that. So make sure you tune into that one as well. But boy, you are a busy lady.
I'm happier that way. My husband keeps going, you need to learn how to relax. And I was like, you don't understand. This is my relaxation. Yeah. This is what I really love. I've been a lawyer. I've been all kinds of things. This is far superior.
Get your brain going in all the right ways.
Yeah, it makes me feel useful and fun. And I get intrigued with ideas. And why would somebody do what it is that, I think they ought to do? And,
Well, keep it up, because we love your work. I'm loving getting to know you as a friend. So
thank you. Likewise. I can't wait to have a chat about your books.
Yeah, soon.
I'll interview you.
I'm getting all sorts of great advice on how to get them launched. So when I do, let's do the reverse. You can interview.
Absolutely.
Oh, I'd love that. Thank you. That would be fantastic. All right. Well, I think that we are at our time limit. We covered a ton of topics. So thank you so much for being here today.
Thanks for having me. I really enjoyed it.
All right. And I love your new Colorado house. Just seeing a little glimpse of it there.
As empty as it is.
I think you're going to be happy there. And I think you're going to be very creative in that spot as well.
I think so. Well, I mean, we moved. We decided in the middle of a pandemic, let's move, as one does.
Because why not?
Because why not?
I love it. All right.
It's diverting.
Deborah, the first of many interviews, I hope. And you have a wonderful day. And I'm going to sign off a little bit later, so I won't say an official goodbye to everybody yet. But thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Take care.
You too.
Well, I want to thank Deborah Coonts for taking the time to do the interview with us today. It was just wonderful to get to know you and to hear about all the great books that you have in the works for the future. Really just phenomenal information. And of course, I want to thank Pam Stack for allowing me to be part of the Authors on the Air Global Radio Network today. And I want to thank all of you for tuning in. I'm Mary Curran. Have a great day.